As a wife, how would you react if you find out your husband has a deadly secret he has been hiding from you, which will break the family apart? Find out in the silence in our house. I don't know exactly when things began to change between me and Femi. Maybe it started the year after Toby was born. Or maybe the silence had been there all along, hiding in small corners, waiting for its chance to grow. We've lived in Abuja for nearly 10 years now. From the outside, our lives look neat. A tidy duplex in Gwarimpa, 2 cars, polite children, church every Sunday. People say things like, BC, you are lucky, that your husband loves you too much. I smile and nod. But I know the truth. Love can stay in a house and still feel cold. Femi used to be full of laughter. He'd tease me while I cooked, dance with Dami in the living room, tickle Toby until he screamed. But for more than a year now, he's been quiet. Not angry, just far. At first I thought it was work. His job at the ministry has been stressful lately. Sometimes he comes home past midnight, smelling of rain and exhaustion. I'd ask if he'd eaten, and he'd mumble, "I'm fine." Then go straight to the bathroom. That something deeper was wrong. The distance followed us into bed. He started turning away from me, saying he was tired. I stopped trying after a while. There's only so many times a woman can reach out and find air. Still, I told myself it would pass. I prayed, fasted, read devotionals about patience. But patience can only stretch so far before it begins to ache. Then, one day, I began to notice how close he was becoming to Demilila. It started small, a hand on her shoulder when she spoke. Laughter that lasted a beat too long. Dami is 17 now, tall and graceful, the kind of girl neighbors point at and say, "Your daughter fine, oh." She's always been close to her father, but lately something felt different. I remember one Saturday afternoon. I had gone to the market early and returned before noon. The house was quiet. When I entered the living room, I saw Femi and Dami sitting together on the couch, talking in low tones. He was brushing her hair with his fingers, carefully, like it was something precious. When they heard me, both of them startled. Dami jumped up, laughing too loudly. "Mummy, you're back early." "Yes," I said, dropping the bags on the table. My eyes moved from her to Femi. "What are you two discussing?" "Nothing serious," he said, voice steady but soft. "Just helping her plan for her school debate." He smiled, that small, polite smile that hides more than it shows. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed that scene over and over. The hand in her hair, the startled look, the quick laughter. I told myself I was being paranoid. Femi would never cross such a line. But doubt, once it enters your chest, doesn't leave quietly. Over the next few weeks, I began to notice other things. He started defending Dami whenever I scolded her. If I told her to wash her plates, he'd say, "BC, let her rest. She's studying for exams." If I complained that she spent too long on the phone, he'd say, "At least she's not in bad company." Even when she forgot to cook, he'd smile and say, "Don't worry, I'll buy suya." Meanwhile, Toby, our son, seemed to fade into the background. He was 15 but quiet, always in his room. I thought it was just teenage moodiness. When I asked what was wrong, he'd shrug. But I noticed how he avoided his father lately. How his shoulders tensed when Femi entered a room. I tried not to read meaning into everything, but it was getting harder. The house felt full of invisible things, secrets moving through the air. One night I found Femi sitting alone in the study. His face was buried in his hands. When he saw me, he straightened up quickly. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I'm fine," he said. His voice sounded too calm. I stepped closer. "Femi, talk to me, please." He forced a smile. "It's just work stress, BC. Go and sleep." But that night, While he pretended to sleep beside me, I heard him whispering something. His voice was low, trembling. I could only catch a few words. Not again, not again. A week later, my sister Funk visited from Lagos. Over lunch, she noticed the tension. "BC, are you sure everything is fine with you and your husband?" she asked. I hesitated. Then I told her not everything but enough. Her eyes widened. "Ah, you think he's with Damilola?" I covered my face. "I don't know, Funk. I just feel something is wrong. He's distant. She's defensive. They hide things." Funk held my hand. "Sister, please don't jump to conclusions. You know, men can act strange for many reasons. But keep your eyes open. Pray, but watch." Her words stayed with me. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the clock. The silence in the house felt alive, like something breathing beside me. 2 nights later, I saw something that pushed my fear over the edge. I had gone to the kitchen to get water around midnight. As I passed the corridor, I noticed light coming from under Femi's study door. I thought he was working. But when I peeped through the small gap, I saw Dami inside, sitting across from him. They weren't touching, but the air between them looked heavy. "Please, Daddy," she was saying softly. Femi's voice came low and urgent. "You mustn't tell your mother. Do you understand?" I froze. Then Dami nodded quickly, tears in her eyes. "Okay." I stepped back quietly before they saw me. My hands were shaking so badly that the glass of water almost slipped. What were they hiding? Why couldn't I be told? That night, I lay awake till morning. My chest hurt with thoughts I didn't want to think. The next day, Femi avoided me completely. He left for work early, came back late. Dami barely spoke to me. I could feel the house breaking into small, quiet pieces. It was a Thursday evening, the sky bruised with harmattan dust. I came home early from work because I couldn't focus. The thought of Femi and Dami in that study kept replaying in my mind like a song I couldn't stop hearing. The house was too quiet again. Dami's slippers were by the stairs. Femi's car wasn't outside. Only Toby sat in the living room, hunched over a book. I watched him for a moment. He had grown taller, his face longer, eyes shadowed. I noticed again how withdrawn he had become. "Toby," I said softly, "are you okay?" He looked up and forced a smile. "Yes, Mummy. Have you eaten?" He nodded, then looked down again. I walked closer, sat beside him. "Is your father treating you well?" His hand froze mid-page. "Yes, Ma. You sure?" He hesitated. "Daddy is fine." Then he stood up quickly. "I need to go and read." He walked off before I could say anything else. I sat there for a long time after he left, the air thick around me. Later that night, I heard raised voices coming from the study. Femi and Toby this time. I tiptoed close. "You don't understand, Daddy," Toby was saying, his voice breaking. "I understand more than you think." Femi shot back. "Then why can't we just tell Mummy?" "Because she won't understand." Femi's tone softened suddenly. "She think it's something else. Something else." I felt my legs go weak. I stumbled back quietly, my heart hammering. What was this secret that moved from Dami to Toby now? When Femi came to bed later, I pretended to be asleep. He lay beside me, breathing heavily. I could smell the faint scent of menthol balm he'd been rubbing his temples again. At some point in the night, I woke to find him sitting up, head in his hands. He was whispering again. I couldn't hear the words clearly, only the pain in them. Days turned into weeks. The silence between us grew into a wall. Then one afternoon, while cleaning the bedroom, I found something that began to crack that wall open. It was a small black notebook, tucked under Femi's old shirts in the wardrobe. My hands shook as I opened it. Most of the pages were blank, but on one of them I saw lines written in his neat handwriting. She suspects. I can't let her know the truth. I failed once before. I can't fail him too. God, forgive me. I don't know how to live with this anymore. Failed him? My heart pounded. Which him? Toby? I sat on the bed, notebook in hand, feeling the world tilt slightly. That night, I couldn't eat. When Femi asked why, I just said I wasn't hungry. He nodded slowly, like he already knew. A few days later it happened, the night everything changed. There was a storm that evening, heavy rain slapping against the windows. Femi hadn't come home. Toby hadn't either. I called both their phones, nothing. By 10 p.m., my chest was burning with worry. Then my phone rang. It was our neighbour, Mr. Adebayo. Madam Bisi, I just passed Jarby Lake now, and I think I saw your husband's car parked near the trees. Is everything okay? My heart stopped for a moment. You're sure? Yes, Ma, I'm sure. It's that black Toyota Camry. I grabbed my shawl and rushed out, not even wearing slippers properly. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the roads glistened with water. When I reached the lake, I saw the car exactly where he said, under a tree, engine off. I ran closer. Inside, I saw Femi in the driver's seat and Toby beside him. Both of them looked like ghosts, pale, wet, exhausted. I knocked on the window. Femi! He flinched, then lowered it slowly. What are you doing here? I shouted, my voice trembling. I've been calling since. Femi didn't answer immediately. He glanced at Toby, then back at me. Please, Bisi, get inside the car. It's cold. No, tell me what is going on. He sighed, his eyes tired. Not here, please. Toby's eyes were red, swollen. Mummy, please, let's go home, he whispered. The tone in his voice broke something in me. I nodded and climbed in. The drive home was silent, except for the wipers brushing rain from the glass. When we got home, Femi told Toby to go to bed. The boy obeyed, shoulders slumped. Then Femi turned to me. Bisi, not tonight. I'll explain tomorrow. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was nod. That night, I lay awake beside him, feeling the distance like a wall between us. The next morning, I woke before him. His phone was on the bedside table. I didn't mean to pry, or maybe I did. I unlocked it and opened his email. That's when I found the message. A draft never sent, addressed to me. The subject line read, "If you ever find this." I opened it with shaking fingers. My Bisi, there are things I never told you. Things that started long before we met. I have carried them like stones in my chest. When I was 13 in boarding school, something happened to me. A senior boy. I stopped reading there for a moment, heart in my throat. The words blurred, but I forced myself to continue. He hurt me in ways I can't even write. I kept quiet. I thought it was my fault. I thought I was broken. But the silence followed me into adulthood. I married you thinking love would heal me, but the wound never really closed. When I saw Toby being bullied at school, it all came back. The same fear, the same helplessness. I couldn't stand it. I pulled him out of that mess, used my job to cover it up. I didn't want you to know, because I didn't want you to see me as weak. That's why I've been distant. That's why I've been strange. You thought it was Dami. I saw it in your eyes, and it broke me. But I couldn't tell you the truth without breaking apart myself. Please, Bisi. I never meant to hurt you. I only wanted to protect what's left of me and of our children. Femi, I stared at the screen for a long time. The house felt still, as if even the walls were holding their breath. So that was the secret. Not sin, not betrayal, but pain. And the man I had been hating for months was only trying to outrun his own past. That night, I didn't confront him. I couldn't. I just watched him from across the dinner table. the flicker of the bulb drawing shadows on his face. He looked at me once, uncertain. "You're quiet tonight," he said. I forced a smile. "Just tired." He nodded, eyes searching mine, as if trying to read what I knew. I wanted to tell him I'd read it, that I understood now, that I forgave him, that the words stuck somewhere between my chest and throat. So I just sat there, watching him eat slowly, wondering how many kinds of silence can live in one house. The next few days after reading Femi's draft felt like living in fog. I went through my routines, cooking, working, pretending to sleep, but it all felt hollow. The words from his message replayed in my mind. I thought I was broken. He didn't know that I had read it, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him. I wanted to understand first to make sense of the man I had married. The one who had laughed so loudly when we were younger, whose laughter now sounded like a cracked bell. Toby had grown quieter. He avoided his father, avoided me. I could sense something between them. Something that wasn't anger, but wasn't peace either. One evening, I walked past Femi's study and saw the light on. The door was slightly open. I heard him speaking in a low voice. "Toby, please. Talk to me." Silence. "You can't just shut me out like this," Femi said again, his tone trembling. Still silence. Then Toby's voice came, soft but sharp. "You think I don't know why you care so much? You think I don't see how scared you get when I talk about school?" "Toby." "No, Daddy," the chair scraped. "You keep saying you want to protect me, but you're the one who scares me sometimes." My heart clenched. I wanted to step in, but I froze. Femi's voice dropped. "I'm sorry. I just don't want you to go through what I went through. You don't understand the kind of things that happen in those dormitories." "I don't need to," Toby shot back. "I just need you to stop acting like something is going to happen to me every second." There was a pause. I could almost hear Femi breathing hard. Then Toby said more quietly, "Sometimes you look at me like I remind you of something bad." Femi's voice cracked. "Maybe you do." The silence that followed felt too heavy to stand in. I stepped away from the door, afraid they'd hear me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The truth was beginning to form in my mind like a shadow taking shape. Not the kind of sin I'd imagined, but something deeper, more tragic. Femi was not cheating. He was haunted, and his fear, twisted by years of silence, was beginning to poison his bond with our son. The next morning, after Toby left for school, I found Femi sitting on the veranda, staring at nothing. The early light touched his face, and I saw lines I hadn't noticed before. Small cracks of exhaustion. "Femi," I said softly. He looked up. "You're awake early." "I read it," I said. His face went still. "Read what?" "The draft. The email." He closed his eyes, exhaling like someone whose secret had just walked into daylight. "I didn't mean for you to see that yet," he said quietly. "I know," I replied, "but maybe it was time." For a while, we sat in silence, the sounds of the city waking up around us. The distant horns, the calls of newspaper vendors, the smell of rain, soaked dust. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally asked. He rubbed his hands together, staring at them. "Because I didn't want you to look at me differently." "I already did," I whispered. He gave a small, sad laugh. "I know." He told me then, not in full detail, but enough. How in his second year at boarding school, he was hurt by someone meant to guide him. How he kept quiet out of fear and shame. How it hollowed out his sense of self. "I thought if I could control everything," he said, "if I could protect Toby from everything, even from me, then maybe I'd be fine. But I wasn't." "You're still not," I said gently. He looked at me, eyes glistening. "I see him, BC, and I see myself at his age. The fear, the confusion. I panic, I overreact, I say things I shouldn't. He thinks I hate him, but it's myself I can't stand. His voice broke on that last sentence. I reached out and held his hand. For the first time in months, he didn't pull away. That evening, I called Toby into the living room. He looked wary, eyes darting between us. "Sit," I said softly. Femi swallowed. "Toby, I owe you an apology." The boy didn't speak. "What happened to me when I was young? It made me afraid," Femi said. "Afraid of things that might happen to you. I tried to control it, but I ended up hurting you instead. I made you feel unsafe, and I'm sorry." Toby's lips trembled. "You think I'm like you?" "No," Femi said quickly. "You're better than me. Stronger. But I was so scared of seeing you get broken that I didn't notice. I was breaking you myself." The boy's shoulders shook, and before I could say anything, Femi stood and hugged him tightly. Toby hesitated, then melted into his arms. I felt something loosen in the air, a knot finally undone. That night, after Toby went to bed, I sat beside Femi again. "What happens now?" I asked. He sighed. "Maybe we start talking. Properly, this time. Will you tell Dami too?" "Not yet," he said. "Let me learn how to talk to myself first." I nodded. For the first time in months, when he reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. We sat there, holding on to each other, both of us aware that forgiveness was not a single act, but something that had to be built, slowly like rebuilding a house that had been burned but not destroyed. Outside, the night was quiet, and for the first time, our silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace trying to find its way back home. Months passed like slow rain, steady, cleansing and sometimes cold. The air in our house changed, little by little. It was still quiet, but the silence no longer pressed down on us like a weight. It had softened into something gentler, almost thoughtful. Femi started therapy. It was one of the hardest things he'd ever done, he said. The first day he came back, he didn't speak much. He just sat on the couch, staring into space, then whispered. It was harder than I expected. I didn't know what to say, so I only nodded and placed a bowl of soup in front of him. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that holds exhaustion and relief together. Every Thursday evening, he went again, and every time he returned, a little more of the darkness seemed to leave his face. Toby too began to change. He spoke more at dinner, laughed more often. Sometimes he would even sit with his father to watch football, not talking, just watching. But even that silence had a rhythm now, a shared understanding. I watched them both and thought about how much damage silence can do, and how much healing it can bring, too, when filled with love instead of fear. Dami noticed the change before anyone else. "Daddy seems different," she said one Saturday afternoon, as we cooked together. "He's trying," I replied. She smiled. "You both are." Her words warmed me. It had been so long since we felt like a we. One evening, after dinner, Femi and I sat on the veranda again. The air was cool, soft wind brushing the hibiscus flowers by the gate. Abuja nights have a way of feeling heavy and light at the same time, like the city is holding its breath, but still watching over you. He broke the silence first. "Do you ever wish you hadn't found out?" I thought about that for a long moment. "No," I said finally. "I wish you had told me yourself, but I don't wish to be blind." He nodded slowly. "Sometimes I still see it. You know those nights in school? The noise, the smell, the fear. I wake up and it's right there. But now it fades faster." He turned to me, eyes soft. "Thank you for not leaving." I looked at him, the man I had loved, the man I had feared, the man I was learning to understand again. "I almost did," I said honestly. But then I realized, if I walk away now, the silence wins. He smiled, small but real. "And we can't let that happen." Weeks later, I found the notebook again, the same one that had started everything. This time, the pages were filled. Femi had been writing letters, not to me, but to himself. You are not broken. You survived. You are allowed to heal, even if it takes a lifetime. You are allowed to love even after everything. I read each line with tears in my eyes. For the first time in a long while, they were not tears of confusion or anger, but of release. We began small family traditions again. Sunday breakfasts, evening walks. Laughter returned, not loud at first, but real. Sometimes, in the middle of these quiet moments, I would catch Femi watching Toby. Not with fear, but with a kind of pride that comes from rebuilding something you once thought was lost. And I would think of how pain can run through generations like an echo, unless someone decides to face it, to stand in the middle of the storm and say, "It ends with me." One night, as we lay in bed, I turned to him. "Femi," I said softly, "do you think you'll ever forgive yourself?" He was silent for a while, then whispered, "I think forgiveness is something that keeps happening. Every day you wake up and decide to try again." I smiled, "Then keep trying." He reached for my hand and we lay there, two tired souls learning how to hold peace again. Sometimes I still wake up before dawn and watch him sleep. The years have softened him, the lines on his face now more like roads than cracks, paths leading somewhere, maybe not perfect, but steady. I think about everything we've lost and everything we've found again. I think about the quiet strength it takes to stay, and the louder kind it takes to speak. The silence in our house isn't gone, but it's different now. It breathes with us. It listens. It forgives. And that, I've learned, is enough.